So this issue of objective morality and moral objects in language, I want to respond to Fred's fairly recent video. I guess this was shot on February 11th. I think some ways to come at the question of objective morality would be to raise maybe the problem of, let's take some cases where the person who wants to believe that there is an objective morality or that there are values which have a kind of inherent goodness or badness just there in the world, something like this. I mean, this is, again, conference report is debating some of these issues with Gary, Do Not God. And I think the way that I would look at some of this is hierarchies of value where we don't really have pain and suffering as the real issue. I think there is a quick, easy way to go, look, this one causes more pain, this one causes less pain. Whatever causes more pain, we somehow say that is the less preferred one. The moral ground is to move toward alleviating pain when and where possible. I think we get that. Okay, so does that seem like a right logic? I think it does at first. The more that we think about it, though, I don't think that it's going to work. Try to think about things like arranged marriages, and now the freedom for people to make decisions to marry who they want to marry. When you look at the contrast between those two different value systems, and they're very, very different value systems that have occurred in very different cultures, and they do occur, and they're understood, family love and marriage love is understood very differently in a culture that has arranged marriages and then a culture, modern Western European, U.S. cultures, where people go off and they fall in love and they, whatever, they get to decide. What has been the consequences of that emotionally, psychologically, economically, the creation of a kind of dispersal of little satellite people? It's hard to have some kind of value there in the world to that. I think it means different things to different people in different traditions. Some people see it as a great loss. Some people see it as an incredible opportunity. Now, to say that it really has a value, I think we understand the appeal. Yes, I think there is something like an objective value or an objective morality in the sense of how well can people live up to what they know to be the right thing to do in a particular case. I have a book that's coming out on ethics, morality, and legality, and I would want to differentiate those three things. There seems to be an ethical relation, which is how closely does the individual live up to their espoused morals. Morals are always stateable, they're arguable, they're do's or don'ts, they're what you should do or what you shouldn't do, and we can haggle about them. And people have had different morals in different cultures, and throughout history there have been great contestations over morals. Legality is the modern form of morals, and I think it's trying to compensate for an ethical languor and moral diversity. What people, I think, believe is that the more that we recognize moral diversity, the less people will feel obligated to live up to their own morals. So if you have one set of beliefs and I have another set of beliefs, and I really come to terms with the fact that there are different values, the fear, I think, for some people is that that will make some person less motivated, less driven to uphold morals, their own morals. I don't think that that's the case. I think you can have robust moral diversity and yet still have ethical intensity without needing legal apparatus intervening. I think there is a way to balance all three of those. I would say Bakhtin's ethics is probably one of the most robust, which is a robust criticism of the Kantian categorical imperative. Please see the video that I shot on Bakhtin and Bakhtin's Toward a Philosophy of the Act, where for Bakhtin it's about addressing once occurrence. Now, and I talked about this, I was in the Holons Network yesterday. Those guys interviewed me, Matt and John. They were so great. It was really fun to be interviewed with them. But we had talked a little bit there about, it's not just subjective or objective. There's a kind of radical objectivity that comes from the once occurrent unfolding of the world and your own growth and development, that the world is always giving fresh opportunities and wholly new moments that you have to respond to. This is, I think, why Wittgenstein says courage is always original. There's a kind of an existential courage that comes from living up to one's morals. It's almost like, in some of the debate, it's like those people who want to believe there are objective morals, I think they want to be persuaded, or they want to persuade other people, that once we can agree upon what is right, and that there is an objective moral, that people will somehow do what is in their best interest. Is that the case? Could it be the case that knowing the right thing to do doesn't really make someone necessarily do it? How do you get someone to both know what the right thing is to do and get themselves to do it? Right? I think we know about rationalizing delusions. I think the other thing that I would want to say in response to this question of value, the most insidious part of the problem of talking about value is that values and the value that we come to experience on whether something was a good or was an evil is retroactively articulated, and it's most often it's based on the outcome of it. And the outcome is, it's still not given. It's still developing itself. So take all these technological changes that are going on. To many people, they see this as a great loss in, I guess, human community, in senses of family values and traditions, and as opposed to commercializing corporate interests that I think the computer does lead itself to. Now, what will be the long-term outcome of this? Will this be good for people? Will it be bad for people? Well, I think time will tell. In retrospect, it's much clearer to say what was the better value. So, I mean, I think this is, if I'm understanding Gary's point, I mean, Gary is right if we want to say, oh yes, there is this measurable quanta of good, or this measurable quanta of less than good, and then we see that there are these values in the world, but those values, not only do they change and are they subject to different interpretations from whole different traditions, but they often change through time. That is, we discover certain things as having been not the great decision that we thought. Other times, we come to think, what a brilliant insight. We thought this was a bad move at the time, and this was actually a wonderful thing. I think many people, if you take socio-historical injustices, you can see this so clearly. There are, for many, many people, I think we want to see, right, this is a great step forward in a lot of ways. I don't think we want to deny that. But I think what we want to see then is that there is more and more diversity in the world, and we're going to need to handle the fact that there are different moral systems. This is why we have, different kinds of judges. If the world were utterly unambiguous in its values, I don't think we would need sets of judges and sets of communities to people to try to arbitrate some of these fine cases. I guess that doesn't mean, though, that individuals are freed up from having to answer to the particular situations that they're in. I think we are called by particular situations. I'm very sympathetic to the argument that there is a kind of once occurrent world that's calling for our response to it, and it has a kind of value in it. Now, what someone like Simmel would say is, again, part of the problem of value is that values were stabilized through abstract thought, particular money, calendrical thought. The value of a pile of food when you're already full is very different than the value of food when you're starving. It's also very different when the conditions around you are changing. You may be full, but still value the food because you know the conditions of scarcity are on the rise. On the other hand, you could be very full, or you could be really starving, but know that food is in such abundance that you still don't value it that much. There are many different factors that affect value, and some of it is subjective, that is, the actual state of the organism. Some of it is, though, socio-environmental, and so much of it is determined after the fact. Anyway, thoughtful video engagement there between Gary and conference report. I really did find Fred's video, especially about 4 minutes into that video, to be very intriguing, very interesting. Okay, thanks.